To get started, you'll first be presented with a download screen from where you can download the latest version of the software. Simply click on the link and it should automatically install to your PC or laptop. As we can see at the bottom, it installed the zipped folder to my downloads location of my PC. So I'll go to my downloads location, bring that over here, and we can see that we have the actual zipped folder at the top for the file that we downloaded. I'm going to right click, extract all, and then I'll extract to this location, and it will open up that folder location when done. So now here we can see where we have installed the Excel inventory management system. I can go into that folder, and these are the files that make up the compilation of data streams that create the actual software application. So to get started for the very first time, we'll double click on Inventory Management System. Since this is the very first time we've downloaded and tried to install this program, you may be presented with a protected view banner at the top. This is expected. This is a functionality for safety built in by Microsoft. We'll click on Enable Editing. That will remove the read-only banner, and we may have to restart to refresh. So I'm going to close out, and let's double click on it again. This time we should not be prompted with the read-only banner in protected view. So now we can see that the Excel inventory management system did actually execute, and the software was installed to our desktop as an icon shortcut from where we can quickly launch the application. Keep in mind, the application is still installed to your My Downloads folder, which is okay, but a shortcut to that actual application has been saved now to your desktop, so you can access it from there as well. I'll close out of this particular banner, and this is the last time that it will automatically close on us. And from now, from this point forward, we can navigate to our desktop and click on the shortcut, or come back to the downloads location from where we originally installed it and double click on Inventory Management System again. Since I'm already here, I'm just going to double click on Inventory Management System again. Now we can see that we're at the main menu. Now the main menu houses the icons that provide us with the functionality for all the things that we would want to do within the software. To get started with everything, let's add a user profile to the system. We'll simply click on User Profiles, enter our administrative password, and from here, we can scan in a barcode or ID badge that represents an employee to see if they're found within the system. I'll just type one in as an example. Let's assume that there's a barcode ID badge for an employee and it's 12345. We see that that particular barcode or ID badge doesn't yet exist in the system. So now we'll be prompted to create that user. We'll click OK. We'll put in the employee's name. Let's call him John Doe. And he will be currently set up as a standard user. There's different tiered users within the system, but the standard user can do everything for the most part, except for some of the administrative functions. Let's click OK. So now that technician has been added to the system. So whenever that user wants to use the actual application, they will scan in their ID badge or type in their ID number, and then it will automatically associate that transaction with that user. So now we're back at the main menu, and let's scan in our very first item. This will prompt us to log in using one of the approved and stored user IDs based on the badge ID number or barcode ID that we recently set up. I'll type it in, 12345. It recognizes that we are John Doe and we can proceed. We can then grab our item and our barcode scanner gun and scan the barcode. The system will check the backend database to see if it recognizes this item. In this particular situation, it does not recognize this item, so we are forced to add it manually to the system for the first time. From this time forward, it will remember this particular barcode ID number and associate it with the item details that we enter here. So I'll enter the item details right now. Let's call this one sample item 1. We can set up product cost for retail. I'll say that it's worth $10. Some of these fields are optional, and we'll go over that shortly. Wholesale value, I'll set that at $5. The product lot number, let's just give it a generic lot 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now we can also set a product image that represents this particular barcode ID. For this, in order for it to work, you would actually paste in a link to a valid JPEG file that exists on the internet. So if you have a JPEG file that represents the item and it exists on the internet via a URL that ends in a JPEG file format, you can paste that particular link here, and then the item picture will show up whenever it's scanned. But this is optional. I'll leave it blank for now. We can go to the units of measure, and I'll select that these items are sold as individual units, so I'll select each. The vendor category, this is from whom we gather this particular item, the categorization of the vendor, and the vendor name. These two are tethered together, but again, they are optional depending on your circumstance. So I'll just call this one category 1. And the vendor name, I'll call it Acme Vendor Company. We're just making something up for an example. The model number we can enter for the item. I'll call it model 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The SKU, if it exists, we'll call this one SKU 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And the serial number as well as an identifier, I'll call it serial number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, the original quantity expected, we can say that we scanned in this item for the very first time. And if there was a value that we expected to receive, we can enter that here versus the number that we did receive, and then it will calculate a delta if necessary. But this is optional as well. We can leave it as 0 and just say that we scanned in one item. We received one item. So I'll click save. And now that item has been added to the system. We can give it a second to refresh. So now we can see that that item has been added to the system. We have the barcode or UPC number, the name, all the additional details that we've added, and we received one item. So now I'm going to save and go back to the main menu, and let's take a look at our inventory. So right now we've scanned one item in. If we want to ever see inventory totals for any of the items that we have within our warehouse, we just simply click on View Warehouse. Again, it will prompt us to log in. I'll put in my badge ID number, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And now from the inventory screen, we can see the items that we currently have set up within the system. We see that we have the one barcode. It's for sample item 1. We could see that there's currently one item in stock. Once that item is selected, you can see that it highlights the entire row. If we had a JPEG image that represented this item, it would show the actual image right here. Right now, it's just trying to search the internet, so it's coming up blank. But again, if you go back into the settings for each individual item, you can add a JPEG link, and it will show an image that represents that item on the screen. But for now, we can see that there's one of these particular items in stock. So I'm going to show you how you can also manually increase or decrease the stock totals. So once you have an item selected from this screen, click on the plus or minus icon to increase or decrease the stock totals. So if I wanted to increase and say that we really have 3 of these in stock, I would just select the item as we see here, click on the plus. It asks me how many do we want to add to the current total of 1. Let's add 2 more items. And now we can see, once it refreshes, that we currently have 3 in stock, which is what we wanted. Now we can also see that at the bottom of the screen is a product history box. This shows all actions that have taken place against the item in the system. We can see that 1 unit was originally added by John Doe, and then 2 additional units were just added by John Doe a few seconds ago. So every action that takes place is always stored by the system. So let's go back to the main menu. Now, if we wanted to scan an item out, scanning an item out will automatically deduct that item from the View Warehouse module that we just looked at. So let's go to Scan Items Out. Let's enter our employee user ID. And now when you're scanning out, you have to input a reason why you're scanning the item out, because the system looks at it as a formal transaction within the system. So let's select a reason for why we're scanning an item out. Let's say that it's for order fulfillment. And now we're presented with this similar screen from where we can scan items out. We'll place our cursor within the yellow box. We'll grab an item in our barcode scanner gun. Let's scan it. Once the screen refreshes, it automatically will recognize and find the item. There it is again, our sample item 1. We know that it has these particular metadata values associated with it. So now we scanned out this item. The only thing left to do now is to save and go back to the main menu. So we'll save and go back. The transaction is completed. The inventory totals have been updated. And now let's take a look at the warehouse again. If we go back to the warehouse, enter our employee ID, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We can see that our item for sample item 1 currently has 2 in stock. If we check the product history, we see that 2 units were added by me about 5 minutes ago. And then now we can see that 1 unit was also transferred out by me as well. So we can see that it automatically kept track of the inventory as an item was scanned in, as we increased the total, and then as we scanned out 1 item for order fulfillment. If you ever wanted to view this information in an Excel format, there's always an icon on every screen to view all data in a worksheet format. If we click that, we'll allow that a second to process. We'll open that particular file. And here we can see the details of what we just performed in an Excel format. So let's go back, expand everything. So we have our barcode ID, our product name, all of the metadata for that particular item. And if we scroll over, we can see everything that was performed, as well as a history column. And let's just make this wrap so we can read it. I'll just choose alignment and wrap text. And this is just standard Excel functions. So now we can see everything that has occurred with this particular line item. So when it was added, the 1 unit that was originally scanned in, the 2 units that were increased, and then the 1 unit that was transferred out. Now, if that particular transaction that we just performed had several barcode IDs associated with it, this Excel file would just be larger because it would just have multiple rows of data containing individual items for each individual row. So we'll close out of here and click here to return back to the main menu. Now, if we ever wanted to perform searches or anything like that, you can easily do that within this system by clicking on Search Engine, enter our user ID, and here we can search by transaction codes. We know we just recently performed 1 scan out transaction. So if we select this drop down, we should see that here. There's our details of our scan out transaction, and it will show you what exactly occurred. Or you can search by individual keywords for any kind of date ranges or months or years or days or anything such as the product name, the UPC, the vendor. This is just a free text field that will allow you to type in anything. You'll click the green checkbox and it will generate an Excel file with all of the values that match that criteria. And also at the same time, you can also just click the icon here for show all product data, and it will traverse the entire database and output an Excel report with all of the product data that exists within the warehouse, including the current inventory totals. In the next video, we'll show how you can import data into the system. In this particular example, we started from scratch. We've added 1 item to the system. But in the next video, we're going to show what if you already have an Excel file that contains, let's say, 500 to 1,000 products that you want to add to this system. We'll show you how to do that.